just want to throw this up really quick. Let me see if this is what I want it to look like. Perfect. I don't normally film this way, so I was curious if you guys are going to see the numbers correctly. Normally I sort of watch the camera. I want to talk about this topic because it's sort of one that I think we've all pondered over the years, and it's kind of been. I think when rates are lower, this is a topic that becomes very hotly debated. I want to show you guys an email from a broker. This is a large broker, one that is also a carrier that should know this information. So that's the title, right? Do they not comprehend, do not understand, or do they simply not care? So I want to touch. Let me dive into this. Actually, you know what? Let's see. While we've got some people coming in, I think what I'll do is I'll sort of start with this. So if you've seen my channel for any amount of time, you've heard me talk about this before. All right. So this is a way to understand what weight does to the cost of your operations. And I'm trying to do this really simple. All right. So bear with me. So if you're going to haul 10,000 pounds in that trailer, your additional fuel burn will be about 4.4%. For each 10,000 pounds. So if you get 20,000 pounds of box, right, your fuel burn will be about 8.8% higher. If you're going to run 30,000 pounds in that box, you're going to be about 13.2% less fuel mileage. If you're carrying 40,000 pounds, I know a lot of you guys carry more than that at times. But 40,000 pounds is going to equate to about 17.6% of additional fuel that you will consume. Those numbers begin to add up pretty significantly. Look at this. So, I haven't worked out the whiteboard in a while, but I just smudged it all. All right. So if we assume that you're not going to be hauling empty, right? You're going to be hauling air. So if we assume that an average load for is going to be 20,000 pounds, which is 8.8%, versus a heavy load of 17%. So 17.6 plus 8.8 is going to be this 8.8%. If your current average fuel miles per gallon is 6.5 miles per gallon, you're going to factor that in by 8.8%. That's be about almost 0.6 tenths of a gallon less. So it comes up to 0.57. So 5.7 from 6.5 is going to leave you about 5.93 miles per gallon. That's going to be sort of your new mile per gallon for hauling 40,000 pounds. That's the difference. What does that equate to in dollars? Well, if you're doing this consistently over the year at 120,000 miles, at 6.5 miles per gallon, here's the number of gallons that you consume over the year. If you're hauling heavy freight, this is the miles per gallon that you'd be consuming over the year. The delta is about just a touch over 2,400 gallons. You multiply that by $2.85 a gallon, that's over $6,800 a year. If you're doing that for 5 years on a truck payment, that's almost $35,000, right? That's a pretty significant down payment for a new truck. That pays for driving. It does a lot of things. That puts more money in your pocket. That is freaking bad audio. I guess it's been the audio check. I know it is too. It's my headset. Hang on. Hang on. God, that's it. I bet everybody's about to say, "Oh yeah, that audio is a lot better." Huh? That fixed the audio? Is that audio better? Yeah, audio better. Freaking too much going on. So just to recap, right? Here's the bottom line. This is your additional fuel burn.
right? 4.4% if you got 10,000 pounds in the box. If you got 20,000 pounds that you were carrying in that trailer, you're gonna burn about an 8.8% additional fuel. If you got 30,000 pounds, it's gonna be about 13%. If you're carrying 40,000 pounds, you're gonna erode your fuel mileage by 17.6%. So what I was doing here was just running some quick numbers for you that you're not gonna be carrying an empty trailer, right? More often than not. So if you assume that you're the difference between 20,000 and 40,000, that's going to equate to about 8.8%, meaning you're going to burn 8.8% by carrying a heavy load. So what does that equate to in your miles per gallon? Well, you're going to take 6.5 miles per gallon, whatever your average miles per gallon is. I just threw in 6.5, multiply that by 0.088, and you're going to get 0.57. Subtract that. Now your new miles per gallon for hauling heavy freight, if it was 6.5, now it's going to be 5.93. What does that mean in dollars and cents to you? If you assume that you're going to drive 120,000 miles on 6.5 miles per gallon versus 120,000 miles at 5.93, which is the difference in this weight, that equates to this many gallons versus this many gallons. That means if you're going to multiply 2,400 gallons and 2,405 gallons by 285, that's over $6,800 a year. That's 35,000-ish, give or take, for your 5-year period. That pays for a new dry van. That puts a lot more money in the bank. That pays for vacation. That's 35 grand that you spend however you want for your business. Why do I bring that up? I bring that up for a couple of reasons. One, I get that question a lot. I do this video, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a year, it seems like. So that's that. But I want to bring this back to a conversation. Yeah, Larry, I started over. So I want to bring this back to an email that I got, and it was a broker. And I'll kind of fill you guys on how this load went. Sort of a cross-country load, right? Sort of northwest to the northeast. 30, it was around 3,000 miles, right? I think it was 2 picks, if I'm not mistaken, 2 picks, 1 drop. Negotiation was had. Everybody agreed on a rate. It was a light load. It was like, let me see if I can remember here. I think it was around 12,000 pounds initially. Once everything was agreed upon, rate com was sent over, broker calls back and says, hey, time out. Can we add one? We just want to add one more stop. That stop's pretty close, 157 miles, I think it was, out of route. We're just gonna put a little bit more on that trailer. We're gonna put some extra pallets, 13 extra pallets, totaling 22,000 additional pounds from what was originally agreed upon. And so negotiation was like, sure, we can do that, but this is going to cost more money. Broker comes back and says, no worry, I got you, I'm taking care of you. Here's a $100 bill for your extra effort. No, right? No, we don't. We're not even close, right? So they said, well, what do you mean we're not close? What, $100, right? Well, as we sort of all know, right? Typically these brokers understand a couple of things. They understand that typically we're going to charge about $100 a stop. As you heard on Canal's video last week, I think it was, many brokers assume that the average trucks or the average carrier's cost per mile is about $1.70 a mile. Some are cheaper. Some are a whole lot more expensive. The problem is when you're trying to negotiate a rate with a carrier, you don't know if they're driving a truck that's just a couple years old with a brand new reefer or whatever it may be. You don't know if their costs are, $2 a mile or, $1.50 a mile. You have no idea. But it's up to you as the carrier to know that. The other problem is this video could be titled, right? Carriers, brokers, do they comprehend or do they not care, right? It's sort of that. If you're a carrier, you have your own authority, right, or you're a lease operator, and you don't know what your costs are daily as well as per mile, those sorts of things. I'm not going to be politically correct here, right? What you have is a hobby, not a business. don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings here. I'm just trying to tell you that you have a hobby. Now that hobby might pay some bills. Cool. Right. Sometimes, hobbies pay some extra money. That's great. But you're not taking the business serious when you don't understand all these different components. When it comes to the broker, they sent an email that basically said, hey, here's $100 more. And the individual negotiating this said, yeah, no, right? I mean, the rate, just so you guys understand, the rate initially on that 3,000 mile load was about $2 a mile, right, to go from cross country. So sure, so there's 157 more miles. Great, multiply that by $2 a mile. Add in some additional money for the additional stop, and then we have all this additional weight. Now there's a couple of components to this weight issue, but obviously one is the financial impact, right? That's one piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is now you're going to have 22,000 pounds on the tail of this trailer, and the nose and the front half of that trailer is going to be really light. So I think what a lot of individuals don't understand is what happens to a trailer, or what can happen when you have that much weight on the tail of a trailer. It is very easy for that trailer to get out of balance as you're going down the road, and the next thing you know, it's out of control. Add to that you're going from the northwest, where you're chasing a really pretty nasty storm. You've got winds and snowpack, and you're going to have a tail-heavy trailer. It's kind of a recipe for disaster. So this load that started out being, an acceptable load is now turning into something that's really bad. So safety issue aside, they want to offer $100. Individual went back and said, no, right? We've got a lot more weight. That's going to cost us a lot more. So then the broker says this, and I love this argument. Let me see if I can find this really quick. The broker says, so the extra weight counts for extra money? Well, if that is true, wouldn't it be okay to deduct money from the rate con if I put less product on your trailer? It says, my understanding that we book a load from point A to point B, and we charge rate per mile, not rate per pound. Please advise. Look, I don't know if the guy's being sarcastic or not, but if he is or he isn't, kind of a good point, right? Hey, if you're going to charge me for more weight, so surely I get to charge you less. Well, here's the thing that I think that a lot of individuals, a lot of brokers, a lot of people in this industry, for that matter, don't understand. You've got a lot of components that create the puzzle of profitability in this space. Part of it is going to be your rate per mile. And I'll give you guys a quick example. So let's assume, for a big round number, that your cost per day is $1,000. Let's assume that your cost per mile is $1.80 per mile, right? Those are the two costs for your truck, for example. I was looking at a load the other day. It picked up Monday morning, and it delivered late Wednesday afternoon. So we would not be able to get another load on Wednesday. We wouldn't be able to get loaded until Thursday morning. So in that particular instance, right, we're going to be consuming the truck for 3 days, and it was about 750 miles. So they were offering $1,900. Look, 1,900 divided by 750 miles, what is that, 250-ish? Somebody do the math, 250-ish. We would all look at that and say, hey, that's a really good rate. The problem is, I also have a cost per day that I need to consider. And I don't think a lot of guys are considering this, right? Again, you have to understand both of these pieces. And I think a lot of people assume it's one or the other. It's not. You need to understand both. That's what's critical. If your cost per mile is $1.80, you're getting 250-ish. Hey, 70 cents per mile profit. That's great. Some guys look at that and think, man, I did okay. If you look at that from a cost per day, you'd realize, man, I didn't do so well. I actually lost money, right? I actually lost money because I'm going to be consuming my truck for 3 days for $1,900, right? So you have to understand that. So back to this individual's comment of, shouldn't I charge less? Well, what a lot of brokers don't understand, what a lot of people don't understand, is there's a lot of different components that go into factor. Weight is one of them, right? Or it should be, right? You should actually absolutely be factoring weight. It's a lot harder on your equipment. And in this case, depending on where they're going to load that weight, that's a whole nother issue, right? That you should be cognizant of. So should they get money back? Well, look, fact of the matter is we're looking at all the factors, mileage, as well as the time, as well as the location that we're going to go to, as well as the weight, and a whole bunch of other factors to determine, do we want to accept this load as good or not, right? So if they end up putting a lot less on there, it's typically something that we don't know, right? The broker's not going to know until after the fact, right? We're not going to know that. If you tell us you're going to put 20,000 pounds on and you put 5,000 pounds on, we're not going to know until we scale it. Okay. Should you get money back? Maybe, right? Hey, there's some merit to that argument. Depends on the load. It depends on all these other factors, because you're not just renting the trailer from point A to point B. I mean, you can look at that as simply as you want, but how carriers tend to look at things is you're renting it, but we've got to take in a whole lot of considerations to determine what that rental price is going to be. We're not just U-Haul, right? A whole lot of different factors that come into play. So I don't know if they don't comprehend. Again, just because they're a really big broker and they run a lot of trucks as well, doesn't mean that those two sides of the companies communicate. Quite frankly, the fact that this broker might actually know this, they probably still don't care, because their job is to get the cheapest rate that they can. But in this particular case, he wants to make the argument of, do I get money back if there's less weight on there? Well, it's a moot point. It doesn't matter, because you're telling me you're going to put 22,000 pounds more on 13 pallets. So I get the sarcasm of, well, let's have this debate. We can have that debate at a separate time. The fact of the matter is, you're not putting less on, you're putting more on. You're putting 22,000 pounds. Now, if you want to negotiate a new rate on a different weight, we can do that. I don't have a problem with that. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is you're trying to detract from what's really happening, which is we're adding 157 miles, another stop, and we're gonna load incorrectly a trailer with an additional 22,000 pounds. And you want us to chase the storm across the Rocky Mountains over to the East Coast. So there's no part of that that really warrants having a conversation about having less weight on the trailer. Again, if it's less weight, then cool. If you want to have that conversation, we can negotiate on that too, right? We can. I did the quick math, right? So out of route mileage, the additional weight on fuel consumption, and the additional stop, and you're probably adding another $500 to this load. They want to offer 100. Big difference, really big difference. And none of that takes into consideration the safety issue of this trailer having 22,000 pounds on the tail, right? I mean, truthfully, whatever. I mean, every carrier, they're willing to make their own decisions on that. But in any event, so sorry for the jacked up audio. I totally forgot I had these on. Hopefully that makes sense, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Sounds like I'm underwater. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was in the other room. I'm gonna have to completely redo this. Great. Yeah, I'll see if I can edit it. I don't think I can edit it after the fact. Practice over real deal this go around? Yeah, no doubt, right? SRO says, had this very discussion with a broker 2 days ago. He seemed to think that since it was 20,000 pounds, I was going to use several $100 less on a 500-mile run. Right. I mean, there's times in this situation where the amount of weight compared to the load is pretty minimal, right? It's pretty minimal. In this particular case, this is a pretty significant component to the cost of this run, because you're going from one side of the country to the other, right? It gets back to understanding your business, right? Again, I don't know whether they don't comprehend or they don't care to comprehend. Again, it's a little tough to tell based on this guy's argument. But yeah, weight does matter significantly relative to the cost of how we operate a truck. So does the safety of how that weight is loaded. So does a whole lot of other factors, right? Weather, you name it. I mean, look, especially with weather, right? If you know that you're going to be heading into a storm, you need to factor that in, right? You're probably going to lose a day, right? If you can stand, and again, probably the average cost per day for a truck is probably somewhere around $1,000. Some cases it could be more. That's time, right? So that same load that I was talking to earlier that pays $1,900 on 750 miles that looks really sexy on a rate per mile, it's a moot point, right? It's a moot point because it was a load that picked on Monday morning and dropped on Wednesday afternoon. My cost per day to operate my truck is $1,000 a day. Man, doesn't matter. I just lost $800. So when you guys hear me tell you that you can go out of business slowly over time, over 6 or 8 months or a year, you can go out of business by not understanding your numbers. That's what I'm referring to. If you're just looking at rate per mile, I'll speak briefly on this. I was going to do a whole video on this. There's a Facebook group called Rate Per Mile Masters. The guy that runs it speaks all the time about rate per mile. There was a conversation that came up 2 nights ago or 2 days ago, and his comment was, I'm not going to, the contracted rates on some data that he had read, that he had posted, showed $2.26 per mile for a dry van. His protest was he's not going to leave the house until he gets $2.26 a mile. So what? Who cares, right? But what he doesn't understand is there are many more, and this is what several people, myself included, try to explain to this person, was that, great, you can get $2.26 on 100 miles or 200 miles. Does that make your payment for the day? No. If your is $800 or $1,000 or $1,200 for a day, the fact that you protested, but yet you got 226, but the only way you got it was on a 200-mile run, that does nothing for you but help you go out of business sooner. He got so bothered. Anybody that knows this particular person on his channel, he got so upset because he doesn't comprehend this. He deleted like 30 different comments. People were just trying to help him. But bigger than that, what I was explaining was when you begin only talking in rate per mile, you are educating your entire followers, your entire subscriber base. You are incenting them to go out of business sooner. And he's a huge advocate of having your own authority. Because if you only look at rate per mile, you miss it. Again, 750 miles, $1,900, really sexy rate per mile, but you just lost money and you lost a lot of it. So for those that are thinking in terms of just a rate per mile, you miss it. Time is a component. It's a critical component that you must understand. No tattoos were involved. I can't believe he did that. That was crazy. Let's see. Is it cheaper to send 2 trucks or pay one? Is it cheaper to send 2 trucks or paying 1 truck decent? I'm not sure what you mean, the whole. Let's see. A business owner, Benjamin Duke says, as a business owner, you have to learn the items you need to price to get your price. No doubt. It goes on to say, you have many items to know or to give a load to know and to give a load price or a rate. A rate per mile is the load cost to move divided by the miles. Sure, again, right? Just understand, you could have a really sexy rate per mile, but you could be losing money. And sort of the reverse is true as well, right? So you just have to pay attention to both of these components so that you're ensuring that you're turning a profit for your business. And it's so disappointing that the brokers either don't comprehend or don't care. Because there are a lot of good brokers out there that probably do want to understand, but they don't understand all the pieces that go into this. Sure, you're renting our service to take your customer's product from point A to point B, but there's a boatload of factors that go into us making a proper decision on how to price that load. I can only imagine the types of phone conversations they have from some carriers. I mean, we have a lot of conversations about carriers that don't know. So I can see why the brokers are probably confused and quite frankly, led astray down a path, because I'm going to tell you guys, 90% of the individuals that are in the carrier lease op owner op space don't know what their costs are, right? Again, I speak a lot in terms of cost per mile. I'm talking about in costs in general. More specifically, I'm actually talking about your profit and loss. So understand that. Snake Eye says, Exec, the brokers don't care because most of the folks booking those loads just don't consider weight and time on a load. There's always a sucker that will book that load. And you know what, Snake Eyes, you're probably absolutely right. You're really probably right. Again, and so the argument is cheap freight, and whose fault is it? Is the shipper? Is it the broker? Is it the carrier? Is it the mega carriers? Right? I don't know what the answer is. Right? Someone a lot smarter than I would have to answer that. But what I can tell you is, if carriers knew what their true costs to do business were, one, they would be making very different business decisions on the load that they accept. That I can assure you. Right? I've had those conversations with a lot of individuals who don't know what their costs are. After we have some conversation, they start running their business and looking at their business very differently, right? And that's a good thing. But secondly, they would be running their business very differently. Not only would they be pricing things differently, they would be running their business very differently, looking at the loads that they take and the locations that they go to very differently. Gary Roach says, if I can't make at least $800 in profit per day, then someone's load can sit on the dock. Everybody's costs are different, right, Gary? And everybody has their own opportunity to select what loads they want. But knowing your costs are critical. Joshua Martinez, man, thank you for the super chat. But I just do this to try to help. I don't want you guys to spend your hard-earned money on me for sure. Let's see. Gary says, if you're spending more than you're making to move loads, you're losing money. It's simple. It's that simple to understand. And that's it, right? It's exactly it. The analogy that I try to use, Gary, is, if you take $100 into a casino, and you put that $100 bill in, and you get $100 worth of credits, and you start yanking on the arm, you lose a lot of money, and then you win a little bit, and then you lose some money, and you win a little bit. You can sort of drag that on. Sometimes it only takes you 5 minutes to lose that $100. Sometimes you could be there for 5 hours. But you tend to typically lose your $100, right? Slot machines are the worst odds in the casino. The odds of trucking aren't much better, right? So when you begin to understand that what you're doing by not understanding what weight does and true cost and time and all these different variables that affect your business, you just are pulling the slot machine without knowing that you should be playing a different game, right? But you're losing money. Sometimes you win a little bit, you get lucky. But when you're just running around blindly yanking the handle, you're going to end up out of business. And that sucks. Martinez, let's see. What is Logic Family says, please never go to Target Distribution Center in Tyler, Texas. They take 14 hours to unload my trailer. Never, ever go do that again. Yeah, look, we've had some bad luck this past week as well. We had a broker that I think I shared with you guys in a video previously that they didn't send the correct paperwork down from Washington to a load that was going across to Mexico. They wanted to offer us $100 to consume our driver, our truck, and our reefer's time to act as their cold storage for a day and a half, right? So if these numbers are relatively consistent of $1,000 a day, that day and a half before we get unloaded, it's too late for us to get loaded that day. So in all intents and purposes, we've lost 2 days of revenue, time-wise. That's $2,000. They wouldn't pay $100. I had another discussion with a broker. She says, I've been doing this 15 years. You clearly don't know the industry standard for layover is $250. And I said, ma'am, it's great that you've been doing this for 15 years. Have you ever ran a trucking company? Do you know what the costs are? I don't believe that you do. If you did, you would know that $250 doesn't begin to cover anything relative to our cost to sit. So when we have these conversations about detention, and brokers don't want to give detention, they don't think it's whatever, it's not worth it. Listen, very few trucks and trailers are paid for. And even if they are, do you know what the average price of insurance is? It's in the 20s of thousands of dollars. That's average pricing. Right? You've got fuel on top of that. Guys want to make a salary, they want to have money. They got kids that need backpacks, baseball bats, baseball gloves, dance shoes, recitals. You're not doing that on $30 or $40 or $50 an hour detention. You're not. You're just not at all. And you're most certainly not doing that at $250 for labor. Joshua Martinez says, good information. Thanks for being consistent. I'm coming out of one business and have to filter through all the hype on YouTube. Yeah, good luck with that. There's a lot of it. Benjamin Duke says it's just a note as a negotiation point next time for him or another member. TQL loves to put their new agent with points to bring my rate down. Yep, it's taken 3+ years to amass my information. I use it as a club. Good for you. Again, and this is what this is, right? The other day I talked about this. There was a guy on another Facebook site. He was asking about going and getting some business education. And surprisingly, there were a lot of people saying, go to social media. And I was like, no, don't do that. Right? Don't go get your legal advice or your accounting advice from truck stop, lawyers or truck stop accountants. In the same vein, it would be a really good thing to go get some business finance experience. So it's a big deal. So there's a lot that goes into this business, and understanding your profit and loss is really key and really critical. It just is. Egos and ignorance are the cause for low rates. I'm not sure about the egos, but I will agree that individuals just being ignorant relative to their costs and how to run their business, that's tough, right? But yes, right. If you don't understand all the costs and how to look at them from all the different facets when you're making a decision to price your value, to price your truck and your trailer to move freight, it's rough. Little Dog says, do you think the brokers pass on the loss to the drivers, meaning that they take cheap rates from the shippers so that they don't lose the business? They just take what they can get. I do think in a lot of cases, look, that space is highly competitive as well, right? In some cases, brokers do really well for some particular contracts, but in others, right, that are highly competitive, these, a lot of times the brokers are truly making, pennies per mile. So it is really a cutthroat business in that regard. Man, I wonder how many things I can script. I thought I put my call on do not disturb, but I was wrong. So yes, I do think that they pass on a lot of those poor rates. I really do. I mean, they're not going to be. Listen, a broker probably has a pretty good idea what their costs are. They're not going to run their business at a loss. That's not something that they want to do, right? They may balance how many loads did I make at a profit this week versus how many loads did I take at a loss. On some of their customers to try to win that business, and that's up to them. Just like it's up to the carrier to make a poor business decision, the brokers have the same opportunity to make a poor business decision. And as I often say, they're obligated to ask for you to take this at a crappy rate, right? You're obligated to say no. The fact of the matter is, you should be negotiating some terms and conditions on not only that rate based on mileage and time, as well as your profit and loss. The area that you're going to be picking and the area that you're going to be delivering to. There's a whole lot of factors that, but yeah, you want to be factoring a lot of these pieces of the puzzle. Benjamin Duke says, few people research enough to find the points they need to know the cost. A lot of people don't count the maintenance saving as a cost. I know, yeah, I'm good at you're going to need about $12,000 this year. Look, I talked about this too, right? I see a lot of guys profit and loss. And most individuals hold about 12 to 15 cents back per year based on about 100,000 miles, right? That's $12 to $15,000. In reality, these guys are averaging spending $22,000 to $25,000 a year on maintenance. There's $10,000 there, guys, that has to come out of your pocket from somewhere that is not being accounted for correctly. Somewhere, and maybe this number, 12 to 15 cents, came from pre-DEF trucks. Maybe that's where it came from. But I can tell you, having DEF units on these trucks are increasing downtime, which means your cost for the truck for the year goes up significantly. It means you're reducing your revenue, reducing the amount of miles that you can run on that truck, and business that you can get. Plus, you're having to pay for the repairs, right? And if it's under warranty, okay, great. Now you just have the downtime, but you still have to pay for the truck. You still have to pay your mortgage. Still have to pay for a hotel room while they're fixing the DEF issues. So I don't know where I think that 12 to 15 cents is sort of a legacy number, a lot like $1.70 mile is to the brokers. They think that's the right cost. That number is all over the board. And you don't know what somebody else's costs are. Just like we don't know what the broker's costs are. They have no clue. They think they read somewhere that's $1.70. Yeah, it might be $1.70 for a few trucks, but it's all over the board for the majority of them. Let's see. Sometimes you just want to want an in-dump attachment for the box. No pay, just dump it out, right? No doubt. How to negotiate is a hard one to find education on. Kenny has put out a few good books on blast. You have to study. I yes, he has put some good ones out. I do. There is an art to it. There's definitely an art to negotiation. But I'll tell you what, the basics of negotiation start by understanding what your costs are. If you don't know where to negotiate, start negotiating from, again, it's a moot point. Doesn't matter. You have to know. I mean, you can be the best negotiator in the world, but if you don't know that your costs are $1,000 a day or $1, whatever it is, a mile, what are you're negotiating with yourself, and that's the worst type of negotiating to have. So, in any event, that's that. Let's see. I need an hour gauge for my stuff. Cotton traffic. Yeah, look, I mean, we've got a broker right now. We've taken quite a few loads for them. We've got a guy going up to the Northeast. There's been some really poor road conditions, and we're just having to sit, unfortunately. And the broker's really frustrated, and I understand it, right? They don't want to let their customer down. But the choices are to take a really high risk to run those roads right now, or to sit, right? Or to take, maybe we get it there. The other option is because you guys are so frustrated and we don't want to let you down, we end up spraying that stuff all over the interstate on Idaho or in Idaho because you guys are aggravated. Look, it's some produce and I get it, but it's in a reefer. It's temp control. It sucks, but that's a risk you take when you move freight from up to the Northwest in the wintertime. There's nothing we can do at it. Now, if you guys want us to go out a route, 300, 400, 500 miles to get it there, awesome. Guess what? That costs money. It's not $100. It's not. Anyways, let me start to wrap this up. $1.70 is decent money if we're stuck in 1984. Let's see. Benjamin says on the maintenance cost average, yes, pre-def 15 cents, with def 25 cents. Again, that's what most guys' numbers seem to look like. It's in the low to mid 20s. Again, that's a really big difference from 12 to 15. Gary says he's got a 2018 Fitzgerald glider. It's paid for, but still need to make a profit when running a truck, no doubt. Let's see, 110% correct. The reason is because they have never been in a truck and experienced the road. What did Allie say? She said, it's not just the brokers that don't care. Some dispatchers don't care as well. True. Absolutely. Right. There's a lack of understanding. Here's the thing. I don't care if you are leased onto a company, if you pay for a dispatching service, or if you dispatch yourself, if you don't know what the costs are for your business, how should you expect you want the broker just to guess what your costs are? I mean, look, Gary Roach has got a 2018 paid for glider. His costs are going to be very different than the guy that's got a 1-year-old or a brand new truck and a brand new trailer that's not paid for, who has a new authority, and their insurance costs. I mean, those two costs are probably $1 per mile different. True story. So again, how can you expect the dispatcher to know what your costs are if you don't know, right? So there's that. Let's see. Benjamin says one of the items in negotiations that he still has trouble with is it's okay to say no and move on. Listen, I was taught this lesson. I've learned this lesson. The thing is we don't always understand when we're being punked or lied to. There are times when, for a whole host of reasons, that we're oblivious to it. Could be because we're excited about something or excited about the deal. It could be that we're not familiar with our cost or this industry or that whole host of reasons. But what I can tell you this is, once you understand that, there is the only thing worse than no deal is a bad deal. All right. Only thing worse than not having a deal is getting a bad deal. So, kick that around, right? Kick that around before you decide to take a really bad deal on a load. So that's what we got. Look, today's Kyle's birthday. I want to get out of here and I got to finish up some work, and then I'm going to go have some dinner and some other cool fun stuff. So I'm sorry about the horrible audio. I'll try to make a note in here before I upload this. I don't think I can edit it, unfortunately, to kill it, but I'll just make a comment. jump to whatever time that the audio was good. But you guys are always making miles. Stay safe. Educate yourself on what your costs are. Work on educating the brokers in a professional manner so that hopefully we can sort of come together and we can all understand where we really need to be so that they're successful in moving freight for their shippers, their customers, and we are more successful, more profitable to our customers, which is the broker. So as always, you guys stay safe. Take care.